Hundreds of theatres and museums face closures as crisis in the sector lay bare. We're going to read into this story from The Independent, you guys. Let's go. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you are in the world. This is Reganelite here with an article from The Independent with the headline that hundreds of theatres and museums are facing closures as the crisis in the sectors lay bare. Alarming sector as 4 in 10 of Britain's theatres, as well as many regional museums containing local and national archives, are on the brink of closures. Guys, while you're here, make sure you hit the like button and share it across social media so others are notified of this video. So this is a story, as you can see, that came out on Boxing Day. It's a very disheartening one because I have talked one or two times in the past about the importance of museums and theatres, and they are very important in terms of history and in terms of the culture of Britain, and that is under threat, that we want to share with people who visit our town, visit the towns and the cities and villages are all up and down across England, across other parts of the 4 nations. They should not be facing any kind of threats whatsoever. But this, again, comes down to the same thing that I've said before. This is down to the austerity. This is down to the cutting. This is down to what the Conservatives have done over the last 14 years. Have ran down councils, ran down local government authorities with so little less money in their pockets. And even Brexit is also a part of this problem as well, because they used to get a lot of these councils used to have additional funding that they got from the European Union. They don't get that anymore. So a lot of these places now if either raise money, have to raise money, or start charging. I'm talking about specifically museums here, because I know there were a lot of museums there were museums in many places that I've been to, and they used to be free. Some of them have been charged, and some of them are just gone completely. You know, it's very important for whenever people have an opportunity to know a little bit of history. It's not always the case. It's not always about going online and reading it up, because not everybody does that. People like to, go into a building and see the history, to read on it, to read and understand of it. Museums are really, really important, and theatres are such a, there's a power and an influence. Music is a really powerful thing, and to see a show in certain theatres that have some having more history than others up and down across the whole of the UK, to see them being closed is a tragedy, because we're supposed to be a powerful cultural nation, and to see them going away is absolutely tragic as well. So what's the government doing about this? What are the government doing to ensure they're protecting these theatres? What are they doing to protect these museums? This is a major issue that needs to be addressed as soon as possible, because it will hurt in the long term, and it will also hurt in terms of education as well. Because we want the next generation to come along, wherever they are born and raised, to know a bit of their history, to know a bit about where they've been born and understanding it. Because it's not always about what they read online. It's sometimes about what they see and see from these museums. They're given a bit of the history and the culture of their towns, their villages, and their cities, of where they come from as well. I think that's really, really important. It really does matter. So hundreds of theatres face closure. Of more than 500 museums have shut down since the turn of the century, laying bare the true scale of the risks facing Britain's cultural venues. Leaders in the sector are urgently demanding major investment from the new Labour government as they grapple with fresh challenges, including rising energy bills and the hike to employers' national insurance contributions in the budget. After years of cutbacks and underfunding, they have warned of the dangers of cultural wasteland in a direct appeal to the Chancellor Rachel Reeves and the Culture Secretary Lisa Nandy. Yeah, the rising energy, because it costs to maintain these buildings, of course. And with the increase in major bills, it's just, how are they supposed to deal with this? According to a report by the Society of London Theatre, the SOLT, and the UK Theatre, 1 in 5 venues need at least £5 million of investment over the next decade just to continue operating. And without significant capital investment, 40% could close within the next 5 years. 40%! There are around 1,110 theatres currently operating in the UK, according to Theatres Trust. This report also warns that 20 million is needed to save museums from shutting down. 525 museums that are already shut since the year 2000. And in just last year, London's Jewish Museum, along with Simon Leopold and Darren Flock galleries in Mayfair and Friskers, have closed. Literary festivals are also under threat with the announcement in September that Chipping and Norton's Chip Lit Fest will no longer take place. So this map we're going to look at in a moment is museums shut since the turn of the century. Data is published by Mapping Museums highlight the countrywide extent of the closures here. So this is their source from Mapping Museum here. So you can see here, obviously there's more been shut down and closed in England and other parts, but you can see even so, there's been some up in Scotland, there's some in Northern Ireland, and there's some in Wales. So this is a UK issue. Obviously, it's more problematic in England than any other place, but it is still a grave situation, and nonetheless. And if we just scroll over a couple of these, like Prifferdale House Museum closed in 2017, Commando Museum 2020, Museum of Badges and Band of Dress closed in 2004, the Old Sunday School 2018. Museum of Local Life, that was opened in 1971, that was closed in 2003. The Horney Canalist Collection closed in 2015 there. The Otter Gallery in Chichester, it was opened in 2000, that's closed now in 2018. Weymouth Time Walk Museum, 1990, that was opened. That's been closed in 2010. Time House, the Time Travellers Museum and Narara Thomas Shop, that's closed in 2018. Longstone Heritage Centre, that was opened in 1987, closed in 2000 there. Rose Memorial Museum, Manor House Museum there, Courthouse Museum, Woodlands Museum of National History. So this just to give a scale of it, and if you just scroll in, you can give a bit more numbers there. You can see just from some of them that are being closed since as well. That's some of the ones in Scotland there that have been closed. There's some of the ones in Northern Ireland there. I'm just going to highlight for you guys. Link for it is in the description if you guys want to have a look at yourselves. And maybe you can tell me one or two museums that you guys have maybe in your areas that you might know have closed a couple of years ago as well. So the SOLT and UK Theatre co-executive Hannah Essex said, "We have a world-leading theatre sector that prides itself on its creativity and passion and is beloved by audiences across the country. However, theatres are having to cope with their ever-increasing financial pressures. Production costs are rising faster than inflation, with energy bills up 120% since 2019, and public investment in the arts has declined by 48% in real terms over the past 14 years, and 40% of venues risk closure over the next 5 years without significant capital investment." Looking at the impacts of Rachel Reeves' budget, Ms. Essex added, "Theatres are now facing additional challenges with the rises in business costs with national insurance and national living wage increases, adding to the fragility of the sector and resulting in many theatres facing difficult decisions. We are working with the government to identify ways to put the sector on a more stable footing and unleash the potential for growth and communities across the country." The report points out that for every £1 spent on a theatre ticket, an additional spent on £1.40 is generated by the local economy as well. Meanwhile, the director of the Museum Association, Sharon Heal, told The Independent, "In the 20 years that I've worked in the sector, this is the most challenging period, with many museums facing outright closures, loss of expert staff and restricted open hours." And she continued, "Museums hold our national and local collections from contributing to our understanding and where we have come from, as well as offering many health, well-being and learning opportunities. And without them, our towns and cities would be far less rich and vibrant places to live." The biggest problem faced by museums is that many are reliant on local authorities to provide funding and support, but drops in revenue often mean that they are the first to lose out when councils are looking for savings. Ms. Hill said the Museums Association and English Civil Museum Network have asked for a £20 million stabilisation fund for towns and city museums to prevent immediate threats of closure and insolvency. And although we didn't get that in the budget, we are still hopeful that the government will recognise the dire situation that many of these museums face. The rise in national contributions mean that some museums will come out of the budget worse off, and we're calling for an exemption for museums to recognise that many of them are charities, often operating with very small margins. Among the museums and organisations under immediate threat are the Ardjurain Township Museum in Argyllshire, Scotland, Aphrodite Museum in central Scotland, Abbey House Museum in Yorkshire, Dundee Contemporary Arts and Hampshire Cultural Trust. By most recent examples of Britain's cultural crisis is in Cannock Chase in the West Midlands, where last month the council announced that it would be closing its Museum of Cannock Chase and the Prince of Wales Theatre. Cannock Chase's newly elected Labour MP Josh Newbury is spending his Christmas trying to find ways to keep the museum and theatre open, with this year's pantomime set to be one of the last shows. He raised the issue at Prime Minister's questions and explained that the problem arose when operating companies that was working with the council carried out an assessment of the building and realised they need major investment just to meet minimum standards. The theatre was at one point the centrepiece of an application for money from the Levelling Up Fund, but the bid was removed when the project was scaled back. Mr Newbury has said, both will be such a loss to the community. The problem is that once the doors on a theatre or a museum, doors closed on the theatre and museum, it's very hard to reopen them. The theatre has been there for community groups as well as acting as a venue for bigger shows in the area. The museum is one of the last links to the Cannock Chase mining heritage. One prominent figure in the fight to secure investment in the UK's flagging cultural heritage is Tory peer and former Culture Minister Dave Vadsky, who is now on board of directors for the Tate and has warned of the dangers of cultural wasteland being created. He told The Independent, credit where credit is due, the Labour government has maintained theatre, museum and orchestra tax credits and boosted the film tax credit. They talked about an increase in capital for museum. I also appreciate the issue that the government has with the public finances. But having said that, I've always argued that the arts budget is immensely small and is in a great scheme of things, a tiny uplift would have a massive impact. It's because it would secure the future for so many regional cultural institutions, theatres and local museums that are absolutely vital to so many communities. I'm hoping the current spending round the government does look hard. This is not just a sector that is crying wolf. Every so far has had its hand put down its back, and there is literally very little room for manoeuvre. Spokesperson for Mrs. Nandy said, "We are committed to supporting arts and culture in the essential role they play in developing creative skills and people of all ages and background. We are working closely with local authorities to ensure these opportunities are open to everyone, wherever they live, by providing more money for councils to help fix the foundations of the local government. Our package of cultural infrastructure funding will help support arts and cultural venues up and down the country. On top of this, we are providing tax relief to museums, galleries, theatres and orchestras to ensure that they share the world-class productions and collections with more audiences." I hope so. It feels like, yeah, that's just rhetoric talk there. But I generally do hope that they are looking at this very closely. And the Culture Secretary is pressuring the Chancellor for something. Anything. Just something just to give them, you know, I don't want to see these. I don't want to see these closures. I really don't, guys. I really want them to stay. I really want them to do well. I want them to survive. They're really important. The museums are important for our history. And the theatres are really important for the entertainment that people have. They're vital pieces of history that we need to look after for us. And I really do hope Labour do ensure that there is sufficient money for them to ensure that many do not go under. But I part of me does feel like things are only going to get worse before they get better. And I hope that they do pay attention to this sector. So what do you guys think? What do you guys make of the situation around theatres and museums? Are you surprised by the numbers that are closing? Do you blame this Labour or completely on the Conservatives in the last 14 years? Do you think Labour will have the money for it, or should have the money and should invest to ensure that they are protected? Let me know your thoughts and more on this down in the comments section below. And if you found this video informative, please hit the like button, we greatly appreciate it. Share this across social media so others are notified of this video. If you haven't subscribed already, please consider subscribing. It really does help support the channel. If you want to go one step further and financially support me and the work that I do here, you can do so by becoming a YouTube member for as little as 99p, or join me on Rumble or Patreon for exclusive content on those platforms. So thank you all so much for watching, and I hope to catch you all very, very soon.